everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and today Apple released iOS 15.1 Beta 1. This is the first major update or beta for iOS 15, and it's available to developers now. Now, it's not yet available to public beta testers at the time of this video. Hopefully it's out a little bit later today, but most likely it will be tomorrow or in a couple days. Now, this came in at 5.43 gigabytes. That's on my iPhone 12 Pro Max. And generally, anytime you go from a public version, say iOS 15, to the new beta of iOS 15.1, it fully has to reinstall everything and will be a huge install. So it was over 5 gigabytes on my iPhone 11 as well. And also, Apple released iPadOS 15.1 Beta 1, and it was over 5 gigabytes on my 12.9-inch iPad Pro. Now, along with that, they also released watchOS 8.1 Beta 1, tvOS 15.1 Beta 1, and also macOS Monterey Beta 7, and updates for HomePodOS 15.1 Beta 1 as well. All of those are available to developers now. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the build number and talk about what's new. So we'll go to Settings, then we'll go down to General, then About, and you can see the build number is 19B5042H. And this particular build adds a bunch of features back that Apple actually removed from the initial release of iOS 15. But the first thing they've updated in iOS 15.1 is a modem update. So for those of you that were on iOS 15 or previous betas, you'll have a modem update, and hopefully that will help with any connectivity issues you were having. So far, it's actually been pretty stable for me with iOS 15, but hopefully this fixes any additional issues. I also had a carrier settings update with iOS 15 when it launched yesterday, so that may have helped as well. All of those things are available now. Now, as far as the first new feature, well, SharePlay is back. So when you're using FaceTime, you can now share music and TV shows and more. And let me show you that and how that works. And now I'm in a FaceTime call with myself. But if I tap on this, you'll see that we now have screen sharing back. So we can share our screen just like we could before. This has been brought back to FaceTime, but also goes along with SharePlay. So if I go home and maybe go into some music, within music, it says choose content to share using SharePlay. So I'll go ahead and hit play on this song, and it says SharePlay music content. SharePlay lets you experience content with other people on FaceTime. Music may be able to determine who uses SharePlay together in the app. So you can share it with someone else, start only for me, and you can do the same for videos as well. So this is available now, and it works in iOS 15.1 Beta 1. Now, to go along with that FaceTime update, in settings, they've updated an icon as well. So if you go into your settings and go down to FaceTime, we'll go into that. Now on the left, I have iOS 15, and on the right, I have iOS 15.1. And you can see the fourth icon down, the Announce Calls icon, is different. They've updated this in iOS 15.1. Also, back under Settings, if I go to Phone, there's a new icon there as well. Again, they've updated Announce Calls. So the icon has been changed. They've used these little lines to represent an incoming call or noise. Now, another change they've made has to do with AirPods. So if you have AirPods capable of head tracking and spatial audio, they've made some settings changes there as well. So if you go into your settings, and then you go down to Accessibility, and then you go to your AirPods, and you can see I have them connected. Tap on my AirPods Pro. At the bottom, it says Spatial Audio Head Tracking. Follow iPhone. It's either an on or an off switch. On iOS 15, you can see that it's off video content or audio and video content. So they've updated this with 15.1. They've also made it easier to access in your settings in Control Center. So if you go into the Control Center and maybe you have your AirPods connected, press and hold on your AirPods, you'll see it says Spatialized Stereo. Tap on it. Now we have head tracked, on or off. You can select whatever you'd like. So they've made it much easier to sort of select however you'd like this. So if you want it to track where your phone is based on where your AirPods are and where you're listening from, you can do that, or just turn it off altogether. I think it's a much easier way to do this and much faster to access, just like you could before with noise control. So it's nice to see that update. Now there's a new settings change as well. So if we go into Settings and we go down to Camera, and we go into camera, you'll see it says show detected text. This is a replacement for show live text. For some reason, they've actually made this text change. So on iOS 15 on the left, it says live text. Now it says show detected text. I find this a bit confusing since they call it live text in the feature list of iOS 15. So maybe they'll change it back in the future, but it is a little bit confusing. And if you want to turn it off in 15.1, it's called detected text now. And thanks to my friend Steve Moser for helping me find some of these smaller changes. Now in Photos, they've made a small change as well for things you can search for. So if we go into Photos, and you'll see if I search for pet within Photos, it now gives me suggestions for mammal or flower. Maybe it thinks I'm going to type petal, or petunia, flower, or petticoat for clothing. If you type this in iOS 15, it doesn't give these suggestions. You can also find sports balls in here as well. So if you're looking for a soccer ball or a basketball, it will show up. So let me show you that. Now you'll see it found things that have to do with sports, and it also found a soccer ball, football, and basketball. So it found that, as well as some NASCAR pictures and also pictures of Tesla and even some fruit here. I believe that is apples. So it does get a little bit confused. Now, another thing they've updated has to do with health. So if you're using the Health app and you use this regularly, this could be something that would be helpful for you. So this is going to be dependent on where you live and what services you have available. And you can see here's just some of my health summary, but you can add your immunization record to the Health app, which in turn generates an immunity card for the Wallet app if you want to use that. States and health organizations that use the Smart Health cards can use this currently. So if you want to add your immunization record here with a little QR code, you can do that. I currently don't have access to that in my state, but it is available in states like California. Now, something Apple talked about before is the support for Matter. And Matter is sort of a home devices protocol that they've added to iOS. Now, they removed this with iOS 15. They've added it back into iOS 15.1. And we know this because of the notes where they say there's actually some bugs with Matter support right now with notifications. So we know that they've added this back in, and I'll talk about resolved and known issues later, but we know that they've added it based on the notes at least. Now, also, if you have iPhone 13, iPhone 13 mini, iPhone 13 Pro, and iPhone 13 Pro Max, iOS 15.1 adds ProRes RAW support within the code. I don't have that phone right here, but it does add support for that device within the actual code itself, so you'll be able to use ProRes when recording video if you have one of those devices. So you'll have those options. You do have to have one of the latest iPhones to have support for that, though. Now, HomePod gains support again for lossless audio as well as Dolby Atmos. Now you'll see I'm updating those HomePods right now. You'll see version 15.1. It adds that back into those HomePods. So once those are updated, I'll have support for those, or for lossless and Dolby Atmos within my HomePod minis. So that's something they've added back, which is really nice to see. Now on iPadOS 15.1 Beta 1, there are not any real significant changes other than what I've already mentioned, and unfortunately Universal Control is nowhere to be found. If you go into Settings, where you could go into Universal Control before under AirPlay and Handoff, what you would normally do is turn off Handoff, turn it back on, and it would show another control here. That's missing in iOS 15.1. So hopefully they're still working on this with macOS Monterey, but it may not come until later betas or maybe even iOS and iPadOS 15.2. So we just don't know at this point. Now, as far as resolved issues and known issues, in this update, there is one resolved issue that they've mentioned at least, and that's where apps may become unresponsive after using the iPad pointer on the iPad. So that's something they've resolved. Also, there's 3 known issues, and they're mostly developer-related issues, but the one I mentioned before has to do with Matter accessory notifications not working. They tell you if they're not working, reboot your device, and they should work again. Now, as far as the storage bug, they haven't mentioned anything about that, but if we go into my storage, let's take a look at that, since I know it is still affecting iOS 15, since I've had a bunch of you message me about that. So if we go into storage, we'll see what it calculates here and what it finds. So now it's calculated storage. It looks like there is still a bit of a bug here. Maybe it's still calculating, but it says there's 0 kilobytes of 256 gigabytes used. Obviously, we're using some storage here. And again, it may still be calculating it, but if I go all the way to the bottom, Again, it says system data and it says 0 kilobytes. So right now we'll just have to wait and see if it updates, but it is using storage, but there still seems to be some sort of storage bug there. So I'll need to report that into feedback, and you should have your feedback app back if you're using one of the betas. Now, also, someone said that they've resolved the shortcuts selection bug. So where you're trying to select shortcuts, it gives you errors. In fact, I've seen some odd bugs throughout with just touch in general with iOS 15, but the shortcuts selection bug should now work properly. Anything you're doing just seems to be working okay as far as shortcuts go, so that's good to see that it's fixed. As far as green tint, at this point, I'm convinced it's a hardware issue, and I did have someone message me recently that showed me they had green tint on their phone, and Apple told them to bring it into the store and have them look at it. So it looks like that's going to be something that needs to be hardware service this time around, unlike the iPhone 11 Pro and 11 Pro Max. Now, as far as when to expect Beta 2 at this point, iOS 15.1 Beta 2 is probably on a 2-week schedule based on what we've seen in the past. So normally it starts off a little bit slow and then they ramp up with more and more betas. That could change, of course. They could just have one beta and then release it. Just depends what Apple decides to do. But if they are on a 2-week schedule, I would expect it maybe around the 5th of October. Sometime around that time frame, I would expect the next beta. Again, that schedule could change. However, in just a few days, we should have iPhone 13, iPhone 13 mini, iPhone 13 Pro, iPhone 13 Pro Max, iPad, the 9th generation iPad, as well as iPad mini, the newest generation. So all of those are releasing on Friday. So if you pre-ordered one, you should be able to get it that day, either pick it up in store or have it delivered, but it looks like it should be arriving that day for most people. So a lot of different products coming out soon. Of course, I'll have videos about that as soon as I can get my hands on them as well. As far as battery and overall performance, that will take a few days to measure. So far, it does seem fairly fast. I'm still installing it on my iPhone 6s Plus to see how it is on older devices, and it's taking forever to install. iOS 15 seems to be okay, but in general, it's performing quite well. Now, as far as iOS 15 battery life, if I go into settings, like I said, this will take a few days to measure, but I just wanted to mention it. My battery health is at 94%. It's holding steady at this rate. Typically, it will come down to a certain point and just kind of stay there for a little while. And then the last 10 days, you'll see yesterday, I didn't have great battery life. 4 hours and 11 minutes of screen on time, 3 hours and 43 minutes of screen off time, and used almost 100% of my battery. In fact, with iOS 15, since this was from the beta version to a final version, or the release candidate to a final, it did a lot of processing. But I did notice on the release candidate, since I'd been using that for about a week, that battery life just wasn't phenomenal overall, but it's been a lot better for most people that are reporting it. So again, give it a few days. On the betas, it's hard to say. And since we've only had iOS 15 for a day or so, it's going to take a few more days to know how that is overall. And depending on how busy it is this weekend, of course, I'll be sure to do a follow-up and give you more information as long as I have it. Now, I did want to share with you the Geekbench scores since I did run those. So we'll go into Geekbench 5 and we'll go to history. I did run those twice today, and the first I scored 1,602 for single core, 4,093 for multi-core. That's actually not great. I ran it twice and got lower scores the second time. So maybe it's processing heavily in the background, although the overall heat of the device doesn't seem to be getting warm at all. So it's fairly cool to the touch right now and doesn't seem to be processing a whole lot. So it's okay, but generally after you give it a few hours, these will improve with time, the overall scores. From left to right, you can see the iPad Pro 12.9 from 2021. In the middle is the iPhone 11, and on the right is the iPhone 12 Pro Max. So in general, the scores seem to be okay. Again, give it a few days or so to improve, or at least a few hours if you are checking on those. As far as anything else, well, hopefully we'll find some additional features in here. It seems to be mostly bringing all of those features back that we had originally seen with iOS 15 that they just left out. But we'll have to wait and see if there's anything else in here or they add more later on. And again, I'm waiting for Universal Control to be live as well. If you'd like to get your hands on this wallpaper, of course, I'll link it in the description like I normally do. And if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.